Okay, so today's discussion will be about low notes and the bottom of the voice. I was asking people who are at the Met, when you think of women who have some of the best low notes there, who comes to mind? And Leona Mitchell said, "Ooh, Isola Jones was one of the best I ever heard." And then someone else, his name is Jeffrey Riggs. He's a opera historian. He said, Isola Jones. That was one of the best bottoms I had ever heard. So,
Okay, you could take that a few different ways. Thank you, Jeffrey. My eyes are here, Jeffrey.
but I've heard you had one of the best lower registers at the history of that house. So just to start off, what is the pedagogy of low notes?
I'll start off with my thinking on my own voice. I have a good voice. And what happens when you have a good voice and you're young? You can get away with certain things. The voice will always sound pretty good. I don't think that I was necessarily concentrating on singing lower pitches in a certain way or thinking about producing them in a certain way. I opened my mouth and it was there. In my case, and I don't think that I'm alone, it is not just the low notes, it's the low, the middle, and the top. Do they all sound the same? Is there any tension? Is there any intonation problems? In my case, it was natural. I didn't think about it. They, assigned the roles. I learned the role, and I performed. And that is my story. As in terms of pedagogy, what we have today are people that are forcing the voice down. They're pushing it down. They're trying to make it sound a certain way because, again, sound travels differently through the air than it does in our head. Right here, it sounds really good and it sounds, but then when you're listening to it, it sounds kind of thin because you're squeezing the vocal cords and you're trying to make them do something. The goal for everyone singing is to find where the voice is comfortable. How is it produced? How do you get the maximum results? The maximum results are generated through resonance. It's not generated through force because that force is going to thin out the sound and it is going to invite intonation problems. Vocal cords have to move at a certain speed in order to get the pitch spontaneously. If you're squeezing to make the pitch, it's not going to move fast enough actually for that pitch. It's going to be under the pitch. With singing, there's just a few moving parts. You say the vowels here, you say the words here. You relax this, and you get this working. You support, and just a good breath, a healthy breath, but not this. And people talk about diaphragmatic breathing. When they say that, translates to me that they are, again, including some sort of pressure. When you take a big breath, the diaphragm descends naturally. You take a big breath, descends naturally. It's an involuntary muscle that separates the thorax, the chest, heart, lungs, from the stomach. Doesn't do anything. You cannot manipulate your diaphragm. This is all to say that the voice should feel easy. The emission of the voice should feel easy, that it's just spinning. That vowel is just spinning and giving you waves of sound. Whether it's high, medium, or low. So instead of doing something like that, it's kind of like this because you have to think about the voice, teach the voice through metaphor. So the lower pitches are like this. It's like you have, this is how it was explained to me. I didn't quite understand. I understand it now. It's like you have a brick, and that brick is on a string. But instead of letting the brick drop to the floor, it kind of hovers over the floor. It hovers over the floor and it's vibrating. Ideally, the low, middle, and top feel as if they're all in the same place. The only, oh yeah, you gotta look at me. The only difference is that the lower pitches, the vocal cords, where are they located? They are located in the larynx that sits on top of the trachea. They are attached at the front, at the Adam's apple, and they transverse from front to back inside the larynx. They're tiny. For the lower pitches, the vocal folds move slowly, and they're full length. For the higher pitches, they move faster and they kind of thin out. But if you have in mind that it's supposed to feel a certain way or sound a certain way in your head, you're going to do that, but you're going to do that through tension. And that is the anathema of a gorgeous sound. So to go back to your original question that you asked me 3 hours ago, just do not manipulate the vocal cords. If you relax, you're going to get a beautiful sound.
What I'm about to play right now is two women singing a low E flat. So I guess that'll be tenor low E.
Yeah.
Okay. And the sounds are completely different.
And there you were. I turned my heart around. If I'm making ground.
The first one is from The Fifth Dimension.
Yes. Marilyn McCoo. Yes.
Yeah, Marilyn McCoo. That was nice because it had vibrato. It was nice. I mean, she didn't go. And then the second one, totally, because she was going here to get the pitch. Absolutely breathy, and you couldn't hear it.
How low could you sing at one point?
Well,
or what would you take on stage? Because I know
that's an E flat.
Okay.
That's that E flat. It's easy. But if you have a mindset that it's difficult, or if you really don't have this pitch, you're going to do something to try to get or hit that note. And it always involves with some sort of tension.
Because I noticed, I don't remember what book I was reading, but I remember someone said that some singers, what a lot of singers like to do is for the lower pitches, they like to, as you saw Brandy do, like to go down like that to try to reach it.
That's tension. That's tension. That's not a technique. That is, you don't have that note. If you have to do that, then you don't have that note. Then if you don't have it, don't try to sing it. Because venturing out, if you don't know what you're doing, is going to create a hyper technique, which means that you're going to start doing weird things in order to sing that pitch. The same with the girls who were singing these whistle notes. It's the same thing, except on the opposite end.
All right, so I'm going to share another clip.
Just another Louisiana morning, Sunday rain falling without warning.
So those pitches in that line, I believe, from middle C to low A or low A flat. So
yeah, low A.
Okay, so one thing that I think is interesting is like I know she's not singing classically, but the closest thing I can compare it to are like when I've heard you sing a requiem, like I can't, the note is like, it's low, but it's still going forward. It's not going back. Like we hear with some of these other pop singers or sort of similar with Marilyn McCoo, the note is low, but it's still,
I love Tina Turner. I love Tina Turner. Tina Turner was an experience. But what she did do well in terms of singing, and specifically in that clip, she was kind of speaking on pitch. Da, 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 da. I mean, she was just, I mean, it wasn't, how do I say this? It was easy. She went, ah, I mean, she could have done that, but she didn't. There are classical singers, mezzo-sopranos. It's a Polish mezzo-soprano. I can never pronounce her name. Her first name is spelled Ewa.
Ewa
Ewa.
Pose. Yeah.
Oh, she was amazing, amazing. And even from a couple of weeks ago, Florence Quivar, just amazing. And you just felt as if you're just gonna just take off. You're gonna fly. You're gonna fly with them. You never felt sort of bogged down or pushed down or forced down. They never had to change gears from top to bottom. In pop singers, the difference is that the demands on their voices isn't the same as it is for classical singers. They are not singing at frequencies that demand practically anything. They will sing practically within their speaking range. So, Tina Turner singing A here, she might sing an octave above that, maybe a third above that, okay? But she's not singing up here. That's not gonna happen. So the demands are different. They don't require a lot of technique. We're always speaking on a pitch, but it's a very slow pitch. The frequency is very slow and low. Yeah, I mean, Marilyn McCoo had longevity and always sounded beautiful and always sounded natural. She never made a bad sound. I mean, Marilyn McCoo, beautiful, beautiful singer. Tina might make a couple of sounds that weren't necessarily beautiful, but it was within the context of the dancing and the prancing and the whole experience. So that what you played, I mean, she's just allowing the voice. She was speaking on pitch.
So the biggest thing, because the similar notes between what you said about Tina and comparison to what you said about Marilyn, in comparison to what you said about yourself, is all of them are just those who are actually projecting or making, I guess, some volume.
Okay, let me clear this up. What you think is projection is resonance.
Okay.
What you think is projection, because we believe projection has to do with force.
Mm-hmm.
The irony is that it is totally the opposite of force. Projection is resonance that is freely expressed. Projection includes a lot of tension and pushing and manipulation. That's not projection. Aha. Resonance, free. Ah. That's not projection. That's resonance. The fact that you can hear it, the fact that it sounds loudly to you, doesn't mean that, it's not that. Okay.
That is a cool way to think of. I never actually thought about that.
That's because, okay, so that is what it is. It's resonant.
Yeah, because I guess it's one of those terms that out in my head, that's what I'm thinking, but I also can understand, and I do understand now that you put it that way, why projection can feel like, oh, I have to work to get that sound back. Because I was actually at a famous baritones masterclass a couple weeks back. I wasn't singing, I was just there. I did win a Carmen score though, but I was there. But he was saying like, he kept saying the word project a lot, but sometimes he was like, sometimes when you're singing at the Met, which is 4,000 something seats, sometimes it's you do have to get
No,
that voice to the
I,
back.
I, I, I won't ask what his name is. That is wrong. That's wrongheaded. So, why would he say something like that? Because that's what he does. And he's got a good enough voice. I don't know how old he is, but he's got a good enough voice that he can, that's what he does. And that's what happens with really good voices. They could do that. Mariah Carey could do that for a minute. This guy can do that for a minute, but that is not, again, that's not sustainable. Ah, and certain notes are going to be louder simply by virtue of the fact of their frequency. So the higher pitches are going to be louder. You don't have to gild the lily. You don't have to gum them. And the lower pitches, if they aren't as loud, and if the orchestra is covering you up, your answer is not to try to sing louder. Your answer is to tell you, maestro. Composers wrote low notes so that they could take you back up. And then they would bring you back down so they could take you back up. Sound waves. It's the sound waves. It is the resonance. And you have no idea how much projection that is because you don't feel it. Because you associate feeling the voice with projection.
I will actually, because my new saying now has been like words matter. So I will change that, resonance instead of projection. So I'm gonna play another clip. So with this one, I think she tries to get down to like around tenor, low E maybe, but she almost gets there, and then the voice sort of kind of gives out. I've heard this in some classical singing as well, where people will either miss the low notes or they would just omit them completely. What happens that causes people to miss the bottom notes? Because we always talk about what happens at the top.
To make a heaven, Lord, but
the lower pitches, the vocal folds are a little fatter and they move slower.
Mm-hmm.
It takes more air. As you are singing, if the low note is at the end of a phrase, it takes more air to keep it vibrating. It takes more air. As the higher pitches are, they can sing themselves. You can stay on a high note forever. And in both of their cases, they are in the middle voice. So by the time they get to the bottom, they don't have a bottom because it wasn't free 5 notes before that. So they've already opened the vocal cords to do this, ironically. And so by the time they get to the bottom, the vocal cords are open, all of the air is gone.
Okay, that really supports a lot of things that I've heard different women say. They were all like, because Leona, I was talking to Leona, she was singing something, I don't remember what it was, but she was talking about how it took more work for her to sustain at the bottom than it did to do at the top. Okay. And so just because I want to like try to include the men here, um, because a lot, but I recall I was actually talking to a male, a friend of mine, a bass baritone, and he said when women sing these lower pitches, you all have to compromise a lot more, as where like us as men, we don't really have to. Do you feel that way?
Compromise what?
Compromise in the fact that like our voices are just this. So it's not I'm trying to remember how he worded it, but like it's not as many moving parts with us and the way our voices are made or something.
That's wrong. No, let's put it this way. Men's voices, depending if he's a bass or bass baritone, or bass, let's say a bass. That voice, I mean a true bass, not a bass baritone, but a true bass, that voice sort of blossoms on the bottom. Oh, like, the basses, the Russian basses, they do the, that's the nature of their voice. But again, the voice is a product of one's imagination and one's technique. You can have a great imagination, but you don't have a great technique, it's not going to happen. Women's voices, by their nature, bloom on top. And there are moments when they overlap. That's all. So wherever your voice blooms, so a bass has more than just low notes. I mean, you listen to Giarov or Siepi or Tozzi. I mean, they have more than low notes. They had to sing, maybe they sing Giovanni. I mean, I don't know, the Count, they know to figure out, I don't know. They had to have a full complement of range. So in operatic singing, at least an octave and a third, hopefully, close to 2 octaves. And women's voices can have even more of an extension on top. But it has to be a good, easy emission of the voice. Perhaps difficult, simply because they don't sing well. So yeah, it is a struggle. But it shouldn't, ideally, it should not be a struggle for men or for women.
Okay, so I'm gonna play a male, Donny Hathaway. I think he's singing low D or might be low E flat.
Take time to thank you for my soul.
I don't know if he was trying to make some sort of effect. I don't know if that was an effect or if that's what he meant to do. But then again, this is not classical music. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of get away with some sort of really bad habits. Instead of having the vowel gathered and really being deliberate about it. That's kind of like gospel singing, which is like, it's a different ethos.
Okay, so I will play this Luther Vandross clip and we will reconvene because I actually have that's actually one of the questions I had. 1 second.
He exercised some respect. He didn't go blasting. Mm-hmm. He kind of touched it. So it wasn't as low. You go, just kind of relaxed into it. He relaxed into it. That's the way. So that's, again, the brick with a string on it. You don't let it go. Right? And it's vibrating. You let it happen. You don't go after it hammer and tong, so that the quality matches all of the singing before that.
The way people sing low notes vary by the style of music that they sing it, and you said it does with a few singers we listen to. So I guess a lot of the first male example that we heard, I I can't imitate the sound, but that very, I guess I can describe it as open but hollow sound is,
It's breathy.
yes, it's very common. That's a very common way people approach the bottom in pop music. And is that because of they aren't letting the chords come together completely, you would say, or is that just the vowel or
It's all of the above, including just this is what they think people want to hear. I don't know if they are incapable of singing the pitch. It's hard to know. But this is the style. This is as much the style as anything else. Is what people applaud that. When those, again, like on the opposite end of the spectrum, when those girls would go up to those super, super high notes and it has no resonance, and people applaud that. So what is to tell them not to do it? What is to inform them when they get adulation for doing something, in their case, that is damaging to the voice? And in this case, it is just, I don't know. I don't think that anybody really explored actually singing that pitch, or maybe they did and they can't. If they did and they can't, then they shouldn't sing it. Pick an alternate note that you can sing well. But singing well, Malik, isn't always the goal, because singing well demands certain things. And since we live in an expedited society that does not require excellence, doesn't require any kind of polish, and doesn't necessarily even recognize it or reward it. I could go on and on and on about that. But if you are still celebrated, let's put it this way, if you're still celebrated for mediocrity, then what is your incentive to be excellent? And then, do you know what excellence is? Have you heard excellence? Because sometimes part of it is just that people just don't know. Mm-hmm. Like the old song, how you're going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen Patti. So if they've never been exposed to anything really excellent, they don't know that there is a standard. When music was taken out of the public schools, people have no point of reference, and they don't hear good singing. They don't hear a variety of styles. I mean, I have nothing against gospel music, but if you don't hear really, really great singing, I mean, you could pull up an example of Sarah Vaughn. Okay, she would, but she could do it. She could do it. She could sing the low notes as well as the high notes, and it was all even. It was all even.
Taste aside, how can, say you're going to sing, you sing a low G. If you don't want to do a sound like the first one, and you want to do more of what you do, like or a resonant sound, what do you have to do differently? I guess like the mechanics of it.
The mechanics of it is don't sing it. If you don't have it, wait a second. That's why, listen here. That's why we have music in different keys. Okay? That's why. Verdi, I think I mentioned this before. Verdi, when he wrote Don Carlos, he had two great dramatic sopranos. So he had a great Elizabeth and he had a great Emily. So Odan Fatale was written in a high key. She was practically singing a high C in Odan Fatale. Be natural. For the next performance, he didn't have two great sopranos. He had a soprano, he had a contralto. She's not singing at high, be natural. So he rewrote it in a lower key so that she would not have to go to the hospital after she sang it. You don't have to sing it in a key that is uncomfortable for you. What's wrong with that? Sing it in a key where you sound good. Especially for pop music, or gospel music. Mozart would not write the arias for the opera until the singers arrived, because why write something that nobody can sing? This is true throughout classical music. Sing something that you can sing. If you cannot sing the high C, don't sing the roll. Sing something with a B flat. Instead of trying to sing the high C and somebody is, you have to call 911. Don't do it. Improve your technique so that you can sing the note. On the bottom, especially for women, just because you don't have a top, ladies, doesn't mean that you're a tenor. And women who sing in choirs, you see this a lot in churches. They blast through the middle voice. It's not even the top. They blast through the middle voice. And they can only sing in the tenor range. So they're singing with the men. They're singing in the tenor section because they don't have a top. They don't have a top because they've been singing in so much chest voice that they have broken that very fragile bridge between the top and the bottom. Can it be replaced and repaired? Of course. It can be fixed, but it would take them not blasting maybe for 6 months. You don't have a low G, male or female.
All right. And speaking of low Gs, this is a different sound I've heard produced at the bottom. I feel like you're a fan of hers, but I don't know if it's because you like the show or the singing, but 1 second.
If your child ain't what it should be now, this girl will put it right. I'll show him what it could be now. Just give me one night.
She's saying, I think, started on the B flat, 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Da, da. It was right in the kind of, right. I mean, it's very nasal. That is a type of control. It's has a totally different mindset, totally different way of producing the voice. I understand why she does that. Okay, and then she kind of cranks it up. Okay, Lady Marmalade. All right. Okay, that's how she does it. But that's how she does it. That's how she produces a voice. But, so maybe a fifth from B flat 3 to F4.
Okay. And so because that's the first time I've actually heard someone sing in that range, or at least a woman, in that nasal capacity. Like, why would she make that kind of choice to sing the bottom like that?
It gives her control. At least she thinks it gives her control. But the whole voice is like that. But it's not low. It's not that low.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's middle C. It's just a step away.
Okay.
It has a sonority that's different. It kind of says this instead of This gives her control, so she doesn't have to make any shift change, and she just drives that up the range. It has a sonority of being higher than it actually is. When you listen to Ella Fitzgerald, you think that she's singing very high. She isn't. But the voice, I love Ella Fitzgerald's voice because it's so natural, and the vowels are so gathered. It's natural. She's not singing high, but the resonance, the overtones, give you the sensation that she's singing a lot higher, and she isn't.
That's a good point because I was listening to, one of my favorite girls is actually Jessie Norman. And
Uh-huh.
I was listening to her she sang the mezzo part in the Requiem more than she sang the soprano part. But one of the first things that I noticed, like I was listening to her and Quivar, even listening to yours as well. We have a recording from 1992 or three floating around on the internet. You're with Edith Davis.
Doing what?
You're singing the Requiem. But I
Woo!
brought that up to say that like I've listened when I was trying to figure out what I was hearing with Jesse that I didn't hear with you, that I didn't hear with Florence, is it sounds like Jesse will bring the head voice all the way down. I don't know if I was hearing it didn't sound as resonant as you or Quibar, but is that like that notion of bringing that sound all the way down to keep the control?
Well, no, it is there is a point for everybody, depends on the person, where you have to incorporate a little bit more chest. I mean, I can't say that it's like 50% chest voice on this note and 60% on that note. It is, everybody's a little different. It is a way of doing it so the voice doesn't go off the rails. It's a safety precaution. But there's at some point where you have to engage a little bit more chest voice.
Okay. Sound that makes sense because it like if Jesse's a great example of this. Everything sounds the same from
Right.
top to bottom. And so you mentioned her earlier, and this is the last one, the last example. Um, Let me pull her up.
Just to say goodbye.
Wow, she's saying a C. But it was resonant.
Yes.
It was resonant. That is a sign that the voice is healthy. I can't do that. I can't sing that note. So I'm not going to try. So I would never sing that song. See, that's a sign. That's a sign from heaven. Don't sing that song. So, but she did it. It was, and that had chest, and it was a balanced sound between the two registers. But when you bring head voice down too low because there is a natural, again, this is one of those things that people used to spend 6 months figuring out, how to, when does the, because it's not like, where does that happen? Everybody's a little different. So again, but that's why you need, as the notes descend, you tend to need more air. So instead of maybe go clunk, so she just kept it here so that it wouldn't go badly. But you've got to really monitor the air speed. You have to when you take a breath before that, wherever this phrase starts, you take a breath and just allow it. Let the vibrations help you. Instead of going clunk, it's like, takes a lot more coordination. Ironically, you don't think that it would.
Mm-hmm.
Because most people want to just kind of grind it in there. And then it changes color. It'll affect the pitch. It won't be nice. It won't be pretty.
Okay. So basically, what I've gathered from this conversation about low notes is that a lot of singers try to hit or sing the low note instead of just letting it happen, like some of the better examples.
But it's because they have been led to believe that. Because you said before, words mean something, are important. When somebody says to you projection, what is the first thing? You don't know anything about the voice. But what is the very first thing you're going to do? You're going to try to project the voice. Now, what are you doing? You're going to go to the mechanism and then push the air, push the sound to project. Because you don't understand, and the person that just told you doesn't understand, that projection is not force. Mm-hmm. It is not volume in terms of loud. It is more width. Because what resonance does is fill in that space. It fills in the space, because where's the sound? The sound is everywhere.
Okay, so even somebody like a Sarah Vaughn, I know she has sung down to, I want to say, baritone, low A or G, but I notice that no matter how the woman is producing the notes, even if it's the most well-produced, like Olita Adams comes to mind as someone who sings the lower register really well. But at a certain point, it just becomes, I guess, air, like just air.
Yeah.
So I guess, are we hearing the inverse of what we hear with the very extreme top, like the voice is just not supposed to go there?
Malik, they don't have those notes. They don't have those pitches. We're not supposed to sing every note on the keyboard. Can we get an amen? Because that, all right. Now, there are vocal anthologies, anthology for soprano, for mezzo, for tenor, for bass, and baritone. And they have a variety of repertoire in them. But you're not singing all of the soprano repertoire that's in that anthology. You're not singing Aida and then the doll song. You're not doing that. You pick out the repertoire that is for your voice, that you sound good in, and you sing that. This may be an example of where people say, I've got a 6-octave range. Well, how many of those octaves sound like a human being? And how many of the octaves sound like a chicken or a goat? Not all of them. No, it's not, and it's not a badge of honor. People have this wrong idea of singing and then what is good. So as I said at the beginning, I don't teach my students how to sing. I teach them how to think about singing and how to envision their voice, because your voice, my voice, is your imagination in sound. This discussion, our discussion today, is about people who think that they should have a 6-octave range. They think that that's a thing. They think that that's a thing. Now, there are women that have that on top. They have that extra, octave on top. God bless them. The girls that use that as a party trick now are singing tenor range or baritone range because they have abused the vocal cords to the extent where the vocal cords do not respond to their thought anymore. They only respond to pressure. They only respond to tension. That is the issue. Those voices can be rehabilitated. They can be brought back to life. But they've got to stop doing what they're doing because the muscles are saying, no, we're not singing those notes anymore. No. And the women who have lower voices in the golden age, contraltos, would have a good high C.
Were you a contralto at one point?
No, I just didn't understand how to sing the top.
Okay, because when they were talking and reference about how you had one of the best bottoms, they were like they said they were like you came in as a contralto, or did you come in as a mezzo and then transition up, or what did you come in as?
I came in as, oh my God, where am I? I came in, Malik, as this was God. I had no real idea about what I was doing. I had no idea. As I said, they handed me the music, gave me coaches and teachers, and learned the music. Basta così. No idea. It's called just natural, what I had. And as the seasons progressed, I got more and more things that were challenging. I sang Giulietta in Tales of Hoffmann. Some of my last performances were the title role of Carmen. I sang that everywhere. But again, just talent, kind of taught myself with very limited knowledge. Talent, but very limited knowledge. Conscious, good choices. And over the years, I switched voice categories. But since then, I've got good coaches here in Phoenix, where you would not think that any good music it would happen. So we have an opera company. We have used to be called the Tucson Opera. It's now called the Arizona Opera. So, and there's not a lot of classical music here. I'm doing classical music where I teach because I insist on it and nobody says I can't, so I'm doing it. And I started my own opera company simply because people need to hear that difference. Because historically, for our people, we go into situations, into baseball, and tennis, and football, and basketball. We not only meet the standards, Leontine Price, we raise the standards. She makes her Met debut, 1961. Franco Corelli has to wait 45 minutes before he can take his solo bow. 45 minutes, standing ovation. It's not like they haven't heard this before, but they haven't heard it like that. That's what we do. We don't change it. These are your standards? Okay, we're going to take it to another level. And that's what people, they don't know history. They don't know what Willie Mays and Frank Aaron and Jackie Robinson had to go through. Or Arthur Ashe. Or any of these great athletes that raised the standard of the sport. Leontine Price raised the standard of beauty in opera.